Kidnapping, the action of abducting someone and holding them hostage. The first widely covered kidnapping recorded in US history can be traced back to the case of Charlie and Walter Ross, two little boys who were abducted in front of their house in 1874 for ransom. Kidnappings usually fall into three general types: abductions by family members, abductions by men for monetary ransom or physical exploitation, and more rarely, children abducted by women who intend to keep and raise them as their own. My name's Anthony Padilla, and today I'm going to be sitting down with kidnapping survivors to learn what it's really like to live through such a traumatic and earth-shattering event. Were these kidnapping survivors able to come out the other side of their heinous abduction with a newfound drive to experience all the joy that life has to offer? Or do they live every day deeply tormented by the sadistic evil they've experienced firsthand? Hello, Alicia.
Hi.
Jan.
Hi, Anthony.
Thank you so much for coming on and teaching me about the world of kidnapping survivors.
Glad I'm here.
What do you consider yourself? A survivor, incredibly resilient?
Motivational speaker, an internet safety expert, a missing and victim persons advocate, and an abduction survivor.
I consider myself both of those things. I consider myself also a thriver.
I like that. You're not just a survivor, you're a thriver.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were kidnapped? And do you recall the events that actually led up to the kidnapping itself?
I remember when this new family moved into our neighborhood, and we met them for the first time at church. I was 9. Fast forward, 2.5 years of doing so many hundreds of activities with the family that has now become our best friends and like family. The dad of this family would stop at our house and pick us up and take us all to school. So this one morning, he comes to the back door like he always did, and he says, "Hey," my mom's there, my dad's already gone to work, and he says, "Marianne, I've got this client I have to go see about some furniture. I arranged that I can take Jan and we can go out there and I can teach her some more about horseback riding."
Yeah, what a great opportunity, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a school night. My mom's like, "No, not today. She has piano. Jan has piano after school. It's a school night." But of course, I'm very persuasive. And
right.
She finally caved in. "Okay, all right, you pick her up from piano. I'll get her there and then make sure she's home."
I was 13 years old, and this was back in 2001 and 2002. This was really the start of the internet entering the home. So I spent a lot of time online talking to my friends from school, and most importantly, I felt safe.
Right, your parents nearby, you're safe.
I went into a chat room with my friends, and somebody messaged me who I thought was a boy around my own age. After about 8 or 9 months of this communication back and forth, I agreed to meet him. New Year's Day 2002, we were having a family meal. I asked my mother if I could be excused from the table, got up from the table, and asked her if I could go upstairs to lie down. And she said yes, but instead I walked outside of my front door to meet this person who I thought was my friend.
I got in his car, he handed me my allergy pill, what looked like an allergy pill, and I took it and off we went. And the next thing I remember was I woke up in the back of a moving motorhome. My wrists and my ankles were strapped to the bed, and there was like an intercom looking, I call it a box, that was sitting by the pillow, and I woke up to the sound of that voice. They kept calling me female companion. They never said my name. They said that, "We've been watching you since you were born. We know what kind of food you love. We know your favorite candy bars. We know what this mission that you're supposed to accomplish to have a baby, to save our dying planet." I mean, these words are coming out of this box over the course of 2 and 3 days, and I'm still like, I don't even know what they're talking about. I mean, it just repeats itself over and over again. The motorhome's moving. I fall back to sleep, in a deep sleep, and then I wake up and the restraints are off of me, and the box is like, "You may get up and go to the bathroom and go to the fridge and get your tuna fish sandwich," or whatever.
Right.
I mean, it sounds so funny in some ways, but it was so effective and terrifying, and it was complete control.
You must have felt like you were just constantly in a dream state.
That was kind of the way it felt. And so when I what, you know, when they told me that now was the time that I would meet the male companion, you know, and they've been calling me female companion for all these hours and hours of time, and that I was to get up and I was to walk to the front of the motorhome, and there I would meet the male companion.
And you had no idea who it would be at that point, right?
Right, I thought I had been kidnapped by a UFO. And so when I go up to the front of the motorhome, and here he is, laying on the little motorhome bed, covered in blood, cut. I thought he was dead.
You must have had a huge sense of relief in seeing him then.
Totally. It was like not being alone in the world anymore. And here was somebody that loved me. Here was somebody that could take care of me. He played the part perfectly as he came out of this state, and I'm like crying, and I'm like, oh, he's not dead, you know, and he's covered with blood, and he's looking at his hands and his arms, and he's like, what was that white light? Did you remember seeing that light, that white light that was coming out of the sky? And I'm like, no. And he's like, the car went out of control, and I tried to save you and tried to open the window, and oh, I must have gotten cut by the glass, and what's happening? And so I told him what was happening.
And in this case, you were the one in control because you knew more information than him.
Yes, that was exactly how he got that to happen.
I walked outside of my front door to meet this person who I thought was my friend. In that moment, this little voice spoke up. And by that I mean my intuition. Not that I heard voices, but my intuition spoke up. And it said, Alicia, turn around, this is dangerous. Go home now. And for whatever reason, I heard it that time, I listened to it, and I went to turn around, and then I heard my name being called. And the next thing I knew, I was in the car, and this man was squeezing my hand so tightly that I thought it was broken, and he was barking commands at me, be good, be quiet, the trunk's cleaned out for you. And he drove 5 hours from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to his house in Virginia. And I remember the sound of the car stopping, him dragging me in this house, pulling me down a flight of stairs. And at the bottom of the stairs, there was this wooden door in the basement with a padlock on it. He unlocked that padlock, pushed me inside, followed in behind, and this room was pitch black. You could see absolutely nothing. And picked me up like I weighed absolutely nothing and propped me on this table. And he forced me to look at him, and he said, this is going to be really hard for you. It's okay to cry. And then he turned on the light, and blanketing the walls were all these torture devices. And the media deemed this to be a dungeon. And that's actually a very apt term for it. This was a dungeon. This was somewhere to torture somebody. After that, he put a locking dog collar around my neck with another padlock, and he beat me for the first time. Over the next 4 days, I was beaten and tortured in that basement. People often ask me, did you think he was going to kill you? And it wasn't a question of if, it was when. I knew that he didn't have another choice. He had to get rid of me eventually.
Can you remember the fear that you experienced throughout all that, or is it too painful, like something that you've kind of, you know, pushed away to not have to think about, not to experience that again?
I absolutely remember the emotions. I remember that absolute, total, utter fear and helplessness. I thought about my family, and I knew that they were looking for me because they loved me, and that I knew that they were going to find me, but I didn't think that they were going to find me alive. And I remember feeling so helpless in that moment. I still get really emotional about this, but that I couldn't comfort them.
Were you almost feeling guilty for not being able to let them know?
Just pure helplessness, that I wanted them to know that I was okay and that I loved them so much that I couldn't tell them that, and I would probably never get to tell them that. I wanted to answer those questions for them. It was just an impossible moment.
How were you eventually able to escape and become free again?
Off we continued, deeper, getting deeper. All I remember was the door got knocked down, and people speaking Spanish came in and grabbed him and grabbed me and put us in this little car. By the time that they took us to this Mexican police station, and they put him somewhere in a holding cell, and they put me in a little room, a little small, maybe 6 by 8 foot room. All of a sudden, a police officer, a guard of some kind, came and got me out of the room and took me down to where he was being held in this very dark, seemed like it was down like in a basement or something, but a cell. you know, and through the bars of the cell, he was allowed to talk to me. And he said, I've been visited by the aliens, Zeta and Zethra, the aliens. They've come to me here in the cell, and they've said that we can't talk about 3 things, and if we do, we'll be vaporized.
Oh boy.
We can't talk about them, you know, that they exist.
Right.
We can't talk about, you know, any of the mission, because I'm supposed to get pregnant and have a baby to save a dying planet.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing is that we couldn't talk about any of the relaxing pills that he would give me.
So at that point, you still didn't know you were being kidnapped, even when you were rescued?
Oh no, I thought I had been taken by this UFO because I had a mission to perform, and it was with him.
He needs to see me as a person, because right now he sees me as an object, and if he sees me as that person, then it will be harder for him to kill me. So that was my way of having power. That was my way of fighting. On the last day, which I didn't know was the last day, he said, I'm beginning to like you too much. Tonight we're going to go for a ride. And at that point I realized that this game that I was sort of playing was working only too well. He had become attached, and he was going to have to kill me sooner. Every single moment really, really, really mattered, because if I could get to the next moment, then maybe I could get to the next and the next and the next and the next. Time passed, and I'd completely given up hope at this point. I'd become sort of resigned to what was about to happen to me. And I was brought back to awareness by these angry voices, these people, something about guns. And in my completely disoriented state, I realized or thought that these were people who were coming to kill me. I rolled underneath the bed to try to hide from them. He kept me chained to the floor by that lock and dog collar, so I dragged that heavy chain underneath the bed and tried to hide. And I stayed as quiet as possible, and then I heard somebody say, movement over there. And I watched these big groups walk from one side of the bed to the other side of the bed, and this man like crawl out and put my hands up. And I remember crawling out from underneath of that bed, dragging that cold heavy chain behind me, trying to put my hands up and cover myself, and staring into the barrel of a gun. And I thought, this is the moment, this is it, this is that moment that I'm going to die. And then he turned around, and I saw that it was law enforcement by what was written on the back of his jacket. Yeah. And all these officers rushed in, cut that chain from around my neck, set me free, and gave me a second chance at life. To go from that completely broken, hopeless place to rescue is a shock. He was somebody who enjoyed hurting people. He was a sadist. And so he had actually live streamed what he was doing to me to other people. And somebody who was viewing this video was able to recognize me as the little girl on the missing poster and relate that to the little girl in this horrible, horrendous video. And he ran out and called law enforcement, and they were able to track him down through his IP address because of one of his screenings that he was using. And it was an absolute, complete, total miracle. Something that I say a lot, and survivors say this a lot, is I am so lucky.
How long were you held captive?
I was held captive for 4 days, and he was going to kill me on the day that I was rescued. And that has been such an interesting point over the years, because people ask me that, and I swear to goodness, so often their response is, 4 days? That's not that bad.
What? That's not a response. Yes. You don't say that to someone who's experienced the most traumatic thing in their life for 4 full days.
It's so strange. It felt like, okay, am I supposed to be happy about that? Yes. Maybe it was a short time.
Why are we adding all of these other things to make it seem less bad or more bad? It was bad, and that's just the way it was.
Absolutely, and it downplays it for people who are going through it.
The first time the kidnapping was, I was found 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks later in Mazatlan, Mexico. And then there was almost a 2-year period in between that time and the second kidnapping. The second time that I was kidnapped, I was missing for almost 4 months.
So in total, almost 2.5 years then?
Yeah, that I was being controlled. I mean, I was brought back home,
right.
But I wasn't home.
Right.
And I wasn't myself, because I was totally brainwashed this whole time. And now I'm turning 16, which was the magic number that I was supposed to have the child to save the dying planet. And that if I didn't, then of course terrible things would happen and my sister would be taken and whatever. The summer that I was turning 16, I had decided that I would tell my little sister what was going to happen. And if she didn't want to do the mission, then I would kill her and then I would kill myself. I had this thought. Now, before I kill myself or Susan, I better make sure that this is real.
That was the first time you doubted it.
But because I had that doubt, I started to do very small things to test to see if anything bad would happen. I accepted an invitation to go to a school dance. I'd never accepted. I'd avoided boys this whole time. I was 16 by now, and I'd never been to a school dance. And I just remember going to bed and just going, this isn't real. Nothing's happened. And it was, you would think it would just be a feeling of relief, but it wasn't. It was a feeling of, I've lost 4 years of my life.
Every single emotion that had been bottled up for 4 years, for a quarter of your life at that point, all came out.
That's exactly right. I never thought of it that way, but there were a lot of emotions, and that's when I started to talk. You
didn't know you were being kidnapped ever until way after the actual events had even happened.
That's right.
Have you felt like you were able to get any kind of closure after you were kidnapped?
It may be a resolution. It may be an end to that particular segment, but it is not closure. And last year, he was released early. And I remember I screamed this blood-curdling scream, and I dropped my phone. And my husband ran into the room, and he's like, oh, what's wrong, right? He's freaking out. And I just picked up the phone, and I handed it to him, and he read what happened. And he said, I gotta call your mom. And he called her. And then I heard her do that same scream, and it made me think about, is that the scream that she did that night that I was missing, that she couldn't find me, and that she felt that sort of tear and pain again.
You relived it. It's not something in the past. It's still in your head like it's currently happening. It
hurts and you recognize it, but you keep on with your day. It doesn't completely take you down, that you're able to have those healthy coping mechanisms to get back up and keep going. It's okay if it knocks you down, but that you get back up again.
So that's really the process of moving on. It's not getting closure. It's not having it be something that's just in the past. It's being able to allow yourself to feel those feelings when you feel them, but then to move on with your day.
That you recognize it, that you don't bury it, that you don't hide it, because it will pile up, and then it's here, and then you have a bit of a breakdown, and people don't understand why watching a movie or doing this or doing that hurt you so much, but it's because it's been building up and building up and building up and building up, and you haven't coped.
Do you feel the person who kidnapped you received a fair punishment?
Oh, no, not at all. He only spent 19 days in jail.
For all of this? 19 days?
19 days. That was the sum total of his jail time. He spent time in a mental hospital, but he got released from that early as well, because of course he manipulated all of those doctors and people that he was now healed and fine and he was great.
Absolutely not. But because this was the first case, people couldn't understand it. He actually did a plea bargain and was able to plea out of many of the charges, and it brought it down to nearly nothing. It was 19 years and 7 months, and to be perfectly honest, when I was a teenager, I was like, oh my gosh, in 19 years, I'm gonna be an old woman. I'm gonna be old. And it seemed really far away.
Yeah.
And it's not.
After the second kidnapping, he's best friends with this little girl's mom, who was a single mom, a psychiatric nurse. He's her daughter under her nose from the age of 10 until she's 17. And at age 18, she tells a friend at school she's going to kill herself. And the friend calls the mom, and the mom basically drags it out of her daughter. What are you talking about? You're going to kill yourself? What mission are you talking about? You failed? 7 other little girls who are now women who were abused by this same man.
Oh,
she's the only one of the 7 that I know that had those brainwashing tapes. They did take him to court. He was convicted of a child, then went and spent less than a year in jail.
So 19 days for you, less than a year for another instance of almost an identical story. And because of that lack of proper punishment, it just happened again and again and again.
If you don't cut off access by putting this person in jail, or that they have to live out their life in a facility or whatever, then most likely they will perpetrate again.
And I do believe that he will go on to offend again, and that there's only so much that I can do about that I have to sort of take my hand off of that and let the system do it. And it's very difficult, especially because they released him early and made this colossal mistake in many ways. I actually faced him again in court. I went and I gave a testimony, and it was, I say it's one of the hardest things that I've done, and it was walking into that room. But when I was in that room, I felt empowered. He's back in prison, and he is going to finish his sentence and going to be released on my birthday next year. So, and then that is something that I will have to deal with in the future, that this is real, that my birthday will come along. And it's strange because when you have something that is traumatic that you're not looking forward to, but you have something positive, you're like wishing for this positive thing at the same time this negative thing is right there. And it's going to make this other thing kind of suck. That's going to be a really hard day, and I will figure it out. I will get through it. I'm hoping that I'm on a stage somewhere speaking to a group of somebody so that I can make it better.
How has your day-to-day life changed since being kidnapped?
I was 13. If I ask you, how's your life changed since you were 13?
Yeah, everything?
Yeah, I mean, everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a bedtime.
Right. How does it feel knowing that your story has impacted so many people? There's so many laws that have changed, and you've saved potentially hundreds, thousands of lives. There's really no number. You can't really know how much of an impact it made. I know for me specifically, my parents even referenced your story. They mentioned it to me, and it made me more aware of the dangers of the internet.
It's so amazing to know that the work that I've done actually counts for something, that it's not just me speaking into an empty room hoping somebody listens, but that it's not only being heard, it's being listened to, and it's being applied.
What do you think should be done to prevent others from going through the experience that you had?
We teach children to wear their seatbelt, to look both ways before they cross the street, to not touch that pot because it's hot.
Right.
But when it comes to online safety or sexual abuse, it becomes a very uncomfortable conversation. And it is an uncomfortable conversation, but that doesn't mean that you don't have it. That means that it is absolutely necessary to have, because this sort of crime thrives in darkness and secrecy. So we need to shine a light on it and empower children. It's not about making them afraid of the world. It's about empowering them to make good decisions.
You have to be paying attention, first of all, so that you notice, you know, not just normal teenage angst, but you notice things when something is amiss. You have to be on the front lines of defending your children, because they're not going to talk. They're not going to tell you. The manipulators are adults.
Do you think it's important to have conversations with children frequently and let them know that this is something that needs to be talked about if something like this is happening?
In today's climate and world, and with the kids having a cell phone, they're already on the internet. They already know so much that, you know, that I don't know if they should or they shouldn't. It doesn't matter. They just do. You better be talking. You better be talking, and you better be able to honestly carry a conversation on. I had a 22-year-old come up to me after a speech that I gave at a university, and she said, I didn't know that I wasn't the only special one that Grandpa had. I didn't know until a cousin, after Grandpa had died, said something about how he missed Grandpa, and another one of my girl cousins said, well, I don't miss him. I don't miss being Grandpa's special one. And she said, I looked at her and I said, what did you say? She said, oh, nothing. Grandpa always told me I was his special one. And she said, no, Grandpa told me I was his special one. And then they start talking, and what that meant was,
Grandpa's gonna get in bed and gonna you because you're his special one, right? And they find out there's 6 girls, cousins, that have all been Grandpa's special one from, you know, until they hit about age 16 or 17, and then it stopped, and then they move on to the next one.
It's so disheartening to know how frequent this happens.
And this girl, who's now 22, she said it stopped when I was 16, but I didn't know that there was anybody else. I didn't know any of my cousins. This is now, what, 4, 5, 6 years later that I hear my cousin say this, that we start talking, and then we find out find 6 of our girl cousins. We go to tell the 4 parents of the kids, you know, Grandpa's children, this is what Grandpa was doing to us. 2 of the parents believe them and the other 2 don't. And she said, my whole family is ripped apart and I feel like I don't have a family anymore because I brought up this terrible thing. And the reason we can't fix it is because we can't talk about it, and we don't know what to do if we suspect somebody in our family close to us is abusing.
How do you react when you get people who hear about your story and then respond by saying things like, I would have never let that happen to me, or, you know, it was so easy to escape, why didn't you just do X, Y, and Z?
Please do not ever say anything that is hurtful or victim blaming. If you have nothing nice to say nothing. I think about that a lot in my head.
It's that
easy.
Really try it sometime. I dare you.
To this day, people will say horrible things about me in comments. People will say, well, how did your parents not know? I blame your parents. It's your parents' fault. They will attack and try to take this person down because they don't think about them as a real person.
Right.
Don't bully survivors. They have so much to go through already that piece of support from the community is necessary.
What I generally try to say is, well, I can understand your outrage. I'm outraged too. But you know what? Have you ever bought something that you got talked into and then regretted it? Have you ever done something maybe when you were younger with a boy to make them like you that then you wish you hadn't done? I give examples that just go straight to the point.
Yeah.
We have all been manipulated.
Even something as simple as an Instagram ad that pops up and you say, you know what? I do want that thing. You were manipulated into getting something, or you were manipulated into believing you wanted that thing.
And it's just simple examples like that, and then people start to understand and they start to look at things differently. And I said, because if you can't see that this could happen to you, then you miss the point of why we told and shared our story so honestly.
If there's anyone watching who has survived any form of kidnapping themselves, or manipulation in that sense, is there anything that you would want to say to them?
To know that healing takes time, that you may feel literally 100% one day and then the next unable to get out of bed and be in a much darker place. And that is okay. Do not question yourself. Do not judge yourself. Take your time with yourself. You've fallen down before and you got back up. That strength is still in you.
There is a way to choose to opt out of your past experience and opt in to the rest of your life. It's your mental health and healing it matters, and it's important, and you deserve it, and you can have it.
You deserve it. And I think that there are a lot of people that probably feel like they don't deserve happiness after going through something like that. And there's probably a lot of blaming, you know, self-blaming for allowing themselves to go through that.
You got to keep fighting for yourself and for your mental health. And if it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time and you have to go through various relationships to get there, so be it.
All right, you got 5 seconds to shout out or promote anything you want directly into camera. Go.
Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and we'll keep you informed about Abducted in Plain Sight, the book that's coming out, and how you can help save kids.
You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then also my website, which has lots of videos, different safety tips.
So I hope everybody is subscribing to Anthony Padilla's channel here, because he's doing these amazing people that are coming in and giving the information that I think is gonna save the world, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Jan. I feel like I understand the world of being a kidnapped survivor just a little bit more.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
After spending the day with these incredibly brave kidnapping survivors, I've come to understand just how much strength and resilience one must possess to not only experience being held captive, but also to possess the immense courage required to discuss these horrifying and vulnerable experiences on camera in front of millions of viewers. See you later, bye guys.
Press a like. What would lockdown be without the internet? I don't know.
Right.
We'd be knitting or something. I don't even know. What you'd be doing.
I'd be knitting.
You'd be knitting?
Yeah. Oh,
and you
yeah.
wouldn't be able to even share what you knitted. It's so nice. So many interviews, I don't get to laugh.
You need a little comic relief every once in a while.
Absolutely. And it's so nice to be able to just laugh. I love it.